is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820, WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts.
Yeah, right now. Here we go. 2:04 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. This is the Court of Public Opinion, broadcasting each and every day, Monday through Friday, out of Dallas-Fort Worth. And, of course, we're heard all across the country. It's toll-free, no matter where you are. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. And it's a busy show. We're going to be talking with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton coming up in just a little bit. What we have found out about the Austin bombing, sanctuary cities. Why is the headline reading Texas Attorney General at war with schools? Why? We'll find out. Also, a little bit later, will be, here's the headline: I'm a high school senior. We can make schools safer without curbing gun rights. Well, that alone will keep it from being on CNN, MSNBC, Headline News, and most of the alphabet channels. He's not going to get any pub that way. He's 18. He's a senior. And since the shooting in Parkland, Florida, of course, kids across the country have shown support for increased instructions on gun ownership. They don't really know what they want. They just want something from the government. As an 18-year-old who supports the Second Amendment, he says he can't help but notice that teenagers who share my beliefs are being largely ignored. Well, is that happening? Gosh, here's my I couldn't be more surprised look. All right. Did you get it? All right, fine. Speaking of that, and I'll get producer Dave. I know he's on the phone. He'll get off in just a second. And by the way, when you call in, name where you're calling from and your point. That helps Dave out a lot. He doesn't have time to chit-chat because he's trying to go in through so many calls. But Dave, coming up in a couple weeks, we're going to give people the opportunity to become a part of the show, not just listen, but they'll be able to watch the show.
That's correct. And
take part at the same time. They can, they'll be able to Facebook questions and all that. We'll be doing a live Facebook feed the first hour of every day. And so you can see, to me, I walk in here, and I've been doing this for 25 years. Denver, Kansas City, Dallas, and then 16 and a half years in Southern California, even though I flew back and forth every 10 days. And then back in Dallas, happy to be here. So to me, it doesn't trip my trigger to see a studio. I mean, I've seen thousands of them. And of course, some of you get a chance to catch us on the Red Eye Radio when the guys are gone. But every day for the first hour, we'll be doing a Facebook Live, sort of like what I did with Governor Abbott. What was it, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, that was 2 weeks ago. That was the day that we did primaries.
Yeah, exactly. So Governor Abbott, myself, and some people with his campaign.
Well, his was a lot nicer than what we're going to do, of course.
No, it's not nicer than what we're going to do. It's going to be exactly the same. So if you got a chance to see the governor's Facebook Live event, and I had a lot of fun there. It was a good time. You'll be in, if you will, for what's going on here. You can see the studios. I look to my left. I see, the board op, I call them technical directors because that's what they do. You'll see, be able to catch a glimpse of Dave answering your calls. And then, of course, Eric Bushman. And today it's Dennis Martin. Dennis, how you doing? He's over there. And everybody looks at everybody through glass. I don't know why that is. We just don't want to be in the same room together, I guess. But everybody looks, and if you look to the right, every once in a while you'll see the program director walking by. But we're going to give you a chance to be a part of the show, to look in. So if you're at the office or out on the construction site with your smartphone or whatever you happen to have, you'll be able to be a part of the first hour of every show. That's how we're going to set it up. Today, we got a lot to get to. Like I said, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, and then an 18-year-old that I'm betting you're probably not going to see on CNN. They're not going to highlight this guy because he doesn't further their particular agenda. Although I will say this, as noted by one of the callers yesterday, all those kids screaming for government to save their lives, marches here, marches there, protest here, protest, all of that got knocked off the radar for CNN as soon as we got a porn star that said that she had sex with Trump. Well, there you go. Well, let's see. Let's weigh the difference here. One porn star versus the nation's kids. Well, CNN, I think, decided to go their own way. I don't care. Did you hear what I said? I don't care whether Trump had sex with 20 porn stars or 100 porn stars. Did he do it in the White House? Did he do it on my dime? No, he didn't. That's between he and his wife. Just like Lewinsky and et al. I don't have time to go through the list. And Clinton, I didn't care about that either, except that he lied under oath, and he did it in the White House. That's on my dime, all right? If it were outside the White House before he was elected, that'd be between. How would you like to upset Hillary like that and come home every night knowing full well that she knows what you've done? That's, forget impeachment, forget doing any jail time. That's enough punishment in itself, isn't it? All right. I'm not going to go off on that. I'm so, again, somebody came to me, what was it, a week or two ago, and Hillary this and Hillary that and Hillary. Why do we keep talking about Hillary? Because the Republicans won't stop talking about her. That's why. She's not running for office. Yes, I agree she should be under the jail. Stop talking about her. Her latest excuse is she lost because married white women didn't vote their conscience. They voted the way their husbands and employers wanted. I mean, she's just, you got to feel sorry for her. So if we just stop talking about her, then what is there to say? Okay? They're not going to indict her. She's not going to jail. I don't care if you've got 3D video of her doing something, that amounts to a felony. Nobody is going to indict Hillary Clinton. All right? Now, I'm a realist. Do I think that's fair? No. Do I think that you or I would be under the jail if we did half of what she did? Yes. But your name's not Clinton, all right? Neither is mine. So the sooner we get over that and move forward, the better off we'll all be. All right. Why was I going off on a rant about that? Jeez. All right. 12 minutes after the hour, 2:12 the time. We're going to take your calls. By the way, that last school shooting, forgive me. David, what was the town? The last school shooting, I forgot. Where the resource officer stopped him dead in his tracks, literally. What? It
was in Maryland.
That was in Maryland, right. You know where he got the gun? And by the way,
I know where he got the gun.
Well, yeah. But all these politicians came running out. Hey, talk to me. We need to get rid of assault weapons. We need a broader background check. We need, get rid of assault weapons right now. The kid didn't use an assault weapon. He used a gun. It was a Glock. And first of all, 17-year-olds can't legally purchase handguns anyway. So I don't know what this moron wrapped in an idiot was yammering about. We got to get rid of assault weapon. He didn't use an assault weapon. He used a pistol. Well, we need laws. We've got laws. If you're 17, you can't buy one. Oh, okay. I mean, these politicians are empty suits. They're falling over themselves in the street trying to get in front of a TV camera. That's not what I hired you for. And by the way, it was his dad's legally purchased Glock. This is on the old man. Why didn't he have it locked up? You had to know he's your kid. You had to know he was off the rails. He was deeply disturbed. So, you might want to lock up your firearm. All right, 2:13 the time. Man, why am I getting so excited so early in the show? 2:13 the time. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk, 820 WBAP. All right, 2:17 the time. Let me bring you up to date. CNN Watch. I need a sounder for that. CNN Watch. Is it about the kids? Is it about school shootings? Is it about the Austin bombing? Is it about the bill that was passed today? No, it's about the porn star. She's tweeting. Well, that's it for me. That's all I've got to do. The porn star is tweeting. Tip your waitress. Drive safely. We're through for the day. It's insane. The whole thing. See, I'm very close to becoming frustrated again today, and I want to keep a lid on that for at least a little while. Matthew in Keller. Matthew, how are you?
I am lividly pissed off right now. I called Michael Burgess, my congressional representative, said, hey, you're not going to vote for this. And the person, of course, gave me well, he hasn't stated his opinion yet, which always annoys the pee out of me.
Vote for, okay, what are you talking? Let's be specific.
The omnibus.
Oh, okay. All right.
The giant turd that Congress just laid. I mean, I don't get it. It's like the Democrats will sit there and their basic thing is we're going to stamp our feet until you give us what we want. And it's like, where are the adults in the room? The Republicans will go, okay, you're going to pull here, nuclear option. We're going to cut everything you want. Bye. Have a nice day.
Well, dare I say it, I've got to give Media Matters something every day, so here it is. The Democrats usually get what they want by imitating North Korea. They saber rattle, they threaten, and then finally the Republicans acquiesce in some fashion, some form, some level, and that's generally how it works. That's why the Democrats understand North Korea so well.
I mean, it's insane. We won an election. They should have taken the first day. They should have been signing bills that go, okay, no more funding for Planned Parenthood. No more. I mean, put them on the defensive. Nobody understands that.
Well, why?
I mean, I'd have Bill.
Why don't you run for something, Matthew? I
am.
What you're running for? So, what are you running for?
I'm running for Congress. I'm going to announce it on your show today.
Okay.
I'm going to run for Congress. I'm going to take Mike Burgess out, and then I'm just going to cut every government organization I can get my hands on.
All right. So you're announcing your candidacy for Congress. And your name again?
Matthew.
Mad
Max.
Vote for Mad Max. Well, if you do that, you know you're going to be dealing with some folks that probably going to give you a hard time.
They didn't want their Republican colleagues to see just exactly what was in the bill, because this bill was a victory for investment in our future, protecting, supporting our middle class, and doing so in a way that was producing good-paying jobs.
There you go. It's it's for the middle class. It's a victory for investment. So, Mad Max,
really?
What's the problem?
Quite simple. Congress has their head so far up their own butt, they're a wind tunnel. I mean, come on. The best thing for government to do is to fade into the distance and not have anything to do with life.
Well, Mad Max, you know how many House seats are at risk for the GOP?
No.
68. House Republicans are at risk of losing 68 seats in November in a potential bloodbath that could pretty much mirror their own tsunami wave in the 2010 midterms. Democrats only need to flip 23 seats to regain the majority in the House. I told you, if the Republicans could find a way to lose, they will. And
I mean, here's the thing. They're about to lose my vote for this. I've called Ted Cruz and John Cornyn, and I've said if they vote for this, they've lost my vote.
Well,
and I will find somebody else, I guess me at this point.
All right, vote for Matthew. There you go. Matthew, thank you. I feel your angst. Given that midterm election dynamics typically favor the party out of power. Did you know that? Yeah, historically, they favor the party that is not in power. The Republicans have the White House, both houses, and a record number of governorships, and yet going into this thing in November, they could lose. They could lose the majority in the House. The Democrats flip 23 seats, and it's adios, mi amigos. That's for all the new citizens here. Think about that. All 20 GOP seats rated as toss-ups, or maybe leaning toward the Democrats, could easily flip from a Republican to Democrat in November. So, adding to the challenge for Republicans is that there are very, very, very few opportunities for the Republicans to pick up any gains. Only 2 Democratic seats are rated as possible toss-ups. Scott Rasmussen, I've been talking to for, it seems like forever. Maybe it is forever for me. And he breaks all this down. I'll try to get Scott on. It's John Gizzi. I know John Gizzi pretty well, too. He's the chief political columnist and White House correspondent for Newsmax. He says the same thing. So maybe we'll get Gizzi or we'll David, put a call into Scott Rasmussen. Ask him, I want to talk to him about, the dynamics going into November and where the Republicans stand. Because right now, to me, like I said, I'm a conservative. I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent. I left the Republicans when Bush left the conservative base and started they're just here doing jobs Americans won't do tour. Basically, the only difference between Bush and Obama in regards to amnesty was when you said not just no, but hell no, and figuratively speaking, burnt the White House switchboard down, not once, not twice, but 3 times. He just went back to Washington, said, sorry, boys, I tried. They're not buying it. Let's move on. And Obama said, I don't care what they think. We're going to do it. So there you go. All right. Let me do a little business. As a matter of fact, let's bring you up to date with the very latest news from Dennis Martin in the WBAP newsroom. We also need to check that afternoon drive. Hopefully they've got that rock hauler mess cleaned up. Yep. Another 18-wheeler brings Dallas to a grinding halt. What are you shaking your head at?
Here we go again. Now every 18-wheeler guy is going to call me talking about it.
No.
Please don't call me.
Well, here's the thing. I'll put them on the air.
I know.
You just don't, have a, coffee clack going over there.
I got you.
It's but I will say this. I've noticed that the 18-wheelers aren't driving 3 abreast in 3 lanes on 35, so that's a help.
So are you taking credit for that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am.
There you go.
And vote for Matthew for Congress.
No, I thought it was Mad Max.
Well,
or Mad Matthew,
whatever.
or whatever it was.
Anybody that's got an M in their name, vote for that.
There you go.
All right, 2:32 the time. Coming up in just under 30 minutes, we'll be talking with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, wrap up on the Austin bomber. He blew himself up, right? He's assumed room temperature. And there was a list that was found of some targets. Anyway, we'll talk with the Texas Attorney General about that. Also about sanctuary cities and why the headline reads, Texas Attorney General Paxton at war with education. I know the Attorney General relatively well. I don't know that he's at war with anyone, but we'll find out what that is. The sanctuary city thing, this is finally coming to a head. California wants to split. That's fine with me. I broadcasted out of Southern California for 16 and a half years, and just, besides walking around bumping into palm trees, smoking a joint, that's... Forgive me. Not everybody in California does that, all right? But a bunch do. In any case, if they want to split. I don't care. You shouldn't care either, I don't think. But you got first of all, you got Jerry Brown as governor again. This guy, the only reason he got elected is because the electorate was too young to remember how bad he screwed it up last time. But that's neither here nor there. How Trump could drive the libs insane. How could Trump, he already does because they hate him, but how could he push him over the edge? One of those, bye-bye now, and they go over the edge. How could he do that? By following JFK's example. If John Fitzgerald Kennedy was alive today, he wouldn't be a Democrat. He'd be like a moderate or maybe a liberal Republican, you think? That's exactly how Trump could drive them over the edge. When Alabama, now I was too young, but I've read voraciously about this. When Alabama, that's how you say it. Say it with me, David. Alabama. Yeah, there's no L involved. Alabama. When Alabama Governor George Wallace refused to obey the federal court order to desegregate the schools, what did JFK do? Did he wring his hands and pull his hair and form a committee to issue a report that would be reviewed by another committee? Was it the stuff of CNN? Well, CNN wasn't around then, but was it the stuff of television news? No. JFK just sent in the National Guard and said, get out of the way. I'm doing this. You think President Trump should do the same thing with sanctuary cities and their lawless mayors? Think about this. In JFK's time, I was too young to experience it, but I've read about it. When, that excuse of a human space, Governor George Wallace, them Negroes will go over there, them whites will go over there. I'm not putting the Negroes and the whites together. What'd JFK do? He said, okay, that's fine. I'll send in the National Guard. And that's exactly what he did, to enforce federal law. You think Trump ought to do the same exact thing with sanctuary cities? Why is it any different, really? Planning is underway for a massive, massive immigration strike by ICE in San Francisco and some other Northern California cities. At least 1,500 arrests were expected with this thing. And then the city leaders got involved and started tipping people off as to what was going on. The Trump administration is trying to send the message that U.S. immigration policy will, that's W-I-L-L, will be enforced even in a sanctuary state like California. Okay, sounds good to me. The massive campaign is centered around the San Francisco Bay Area, could start, at any time. And they've already started on some of the ICE raids. They expect to become the largest enforcement action of its kind under the new Trump administration. Good. Fine. It's okay. There are a few other details available from Trump and the Justice Department. But when it comes to sanctuary cities, I mean, okay, well, we're not gonna obey that. I mean, really, this shouldn't surprise anyone. This shouldn't surprise anyone at all. I spoke to you about amnesty. That's been a couple weeks ago. You went out of your mind. My idea was, if you think about it, the people that are here, if they can be vetted and they're not drug dealers or human smugglers or, doing, DUI after DUI, or, if they're just people that came here. Now, I'm not diminishing our immigration law, but I'm saying, we could be talking about this exactly the same way in 50 years if we don't do something. All right? First, numero uno, first, you secure and control the southern border. You got to do that first, period. Otherwise, all you're doing is saying, hey, everybody get here as quick as you can. So you got to do that first. Control and secure the southern border, something that you would think any reasonable American would have thought was a good idea after the second tower fell in New York on 9/11. But there was no political will to do that. So you take it back. You secure, control the southern border. Once that's accomplished, and that's going to take some time, but once it's accomplished, anyone that's here that can be vetted, and all they're doing is working and going to school and trying to have a better way of life. I'll be honest with you. If I was living in Mexico under such a corrupt government, and it's corrupt at every level. The military is corrupt, police force is corrupt, and I know from personal experience. If I were living in the side of a hill trying to put a sandwich on the table for my kids, I'd probably swim that river too. You probably would too. So, let's stop all this, high and mighty. Well, this is what we have to do. Okay, be a realist. This is what we got to work with. Now, if they're gang members, they're out. Criminal record, they're out. DUI, you're out. Any criminal intent, you're out. Everybody else, okay. From this point forward, you don't have to live under an assumed name or a fake ID. You can come forward, not giving you citizenship, but we're not going to send ICE to your home in the middle of the night. You call it amnesty, call it anything you want. I think the thing that got people so riled up to begin with, Rick, you're for amnesty? No, I'm for realistically looking at a problem that we helped create by not creating and maintaining a southern border. I mean, had we done that, we wouldn't be dealing with this. And it's not just one administration, it's several. We helped create the illegal immigration problem we have right now. So, hey, you're giving them a pass. Yeah, I guess in a way you are. You're giving them a pass because we didn't do our jobs to secure the sanctity, sovereignty, and security of a nation. So, since we didn't do that, people took advantage of that, as you might expect. So, secure, control the southern border, then you start the vetting process. If you can't be vetted, got to go. If you're vetted, found to be have a criminal background, got to go. Everybody else, we're not happy with you, but hey, you're here. And you're not in small part because of our inaction to elect the right leaders to have the political will to create a southern border. So call it amnesty if you want. I don't care. But we got to do something. If we don't, after I'm long dead and gone, there's going to be some guy sitting behind this microphone going, hey, how about that illegal immigration? Nothing's going to change unless you decide to do something. All right, 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. It gives me no pleasure to say any of that. But had we elected the right people in D.C., done what they were charged to do and what they said they would do, we wouldn't have this problem. Name me one reasonable reason why there's no southern border to speak of, especially after 9/11. If there was any political will at all to secure this country, they would have started that wall about 15 minutes after, as I say, the first tower fell in New York. Democrats want to create new voting blocks. Republicans want the cheap labor for big corporate donors. Simple as that. Nobody's squeaky clean. Nobody's 100% guilty. But it is, I hate this term, it is what it is. Now it's up to you. Aren't you sick of talking about illegal immigration in sanctuary cities? And why do we have fake IDs here and illegal voting over here? Aren't you tired of that? Don't you want to stop it? Well, all those kids that are screaming from their schools, D.C., do something, politicians, save our schools, stop the shooting. They can't do that. They can't do anything like that. As I've said 100 times, if you want to see the government at work, and how great they are at administration, go to the DMV on Thursday afternoon with a sack lunch and just sit outside and watch that mess. All right? Forget the government in the private sector. Just do what you're charged to do. And when it comes to amnesty, I know it's a dirty word, but at the same token, look, something's got to be done. And it's going to have to be a give and take on both sides after we control and secure the southern border. You see? We need to reevaluate what this is. All right. Let me step aside very quickly. Let's check your afternoon drive to get you around the hot spots. Coming up, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. He'll bring us up to date on the Austin bombing, also the sanctuary cities, and why the headlines are screaming he's at war with education. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I'm Rick Roberts. Your call straight ahead in the court of public opinion on News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, 2:48 the time. I'm Rick Roberts, 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Man, the hate emails are coming in already. Rick, you're not a Republican. No, I'm not. I'm an independent. I'm a conservative, but I'm an independent. When the Republicans get around to supporting their conservative base, I might switch back, but not until then. For some reason, you think if the word amnesty is, and I'm not speaking to all of you, but the hate emailers, call me. Don't email me. Call me. Be a realist. Do you want to be talking about this 2 decades from now? Because you will. If Washington, D.C. has their way, and certainly if the Democrats gain the majority, you're going to be talking about illegal immigration all over again in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Let's be a realist. We didn't do our jobs. We created a problem. Part of this is our fault. So, secure, control a southern border for the very first time. The people that are here that aren't drug dealers and gang members and all the rest, vet them, and they get to stay. They don't become automatic citizens. They can work toward that if they like. But telling me, well, we're going to deport every single one. You can't even control a border. What do you mean deport every single one? All right, let's go to Andy. Andy, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Andy?
Hey, how you doing, Rick?
Good.
I'm a realist too, and I'd classify myself as a conservative libertarian. And but the real reason we have this problem and it's not being addressed is the demographics of our nation when it comes to family production is horrible. It's the study shows that if a culture does not produce at least 2 children per family, then the culture is going to die. It's in decline. America has only been producing 1.8 children per family since the late 80s. So if you add the Mexican population in with Americans, it's 2.2. So it's a sustainable number at that point. But when we look at Eastern Europe, at the European lands, they're at 1.3. Those cultures, they say, will not survive and cannot survive because they've not produced enough children to retain their own culture. And so it's just a demographic issue. When you have 2 people create 1.5 children, and, so 2 couples make a couple that marries, it's 4 people are being supported by
hold on a second, Andy. I get what you're saying, but I'm trying to connect the dots to how that affects illegal immigration.
Well, that's why they don't want to talk about illegal immigration, because if we did get rid of the Hispanic population that was here illegally, we would definitely not have enough children to produce for future generations.
Oh, okay.
So
all right.
So I'm like you. I'm like, especially if we already have paid anyone who's gone through our school system, it's cost the taxpayers.
Well, look at what happened in California. They just, oh gosh, I can't remember the name. But she's an attorney. Obviously, she went to high school and law school here. She's not legal, and they just appointed her to a city government post. First time it's ever happened. So, I'm thinking to myself, look, we need to take another visit, if you will, to illegal immigration. You can turn around the dial and there can be any number of conservative talk show hosts. Oh, they broke the law. Let's get a bus and go pick them all up. Either that or laying all the problem at the doorstep of Democrats. Neither one will work. All right? There was no political will to create or maintain and control a southern border on the Democrat side or the Republican side. Let's just be honest about it. And instead of just railing, well, it's the liberals. Yes, it is. And it's also the elected officials in D.C. We're pretty much on our own with this illegal immigration thing. So just like everything else can be accomplished in the private sector, can't be accomplished in that bubble of D.C. The fact is they're here. They're here because we didn't control the border. They're here because we didn't follow through on employers. They're here because we just didn't take care of our business. All right? So unless they're criminals or drug dealers or all the rest, we might as well face the situation. Most of these people are hardworking, God-fearing people that want to go to school, just simply want a better way of life because they live under a corrupt government in Mexico. I've been there. I could go into that's a whole nother show. But at the end of the day, be realistic. I don't care how many ICE, raids you have. I don't care how much of this stuff's going on. You're not going to be able to stop it. You haven't. When I say you, I'm talking all of us as a nation. So let's be realistic. Unless they're criminals or gangbangers or all the rest, no, I'm not saying giving away citizenship, but they can work toward it. We're not going to call a raid at their workplace or at their home while they're asleep or their kid's school. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any economic sense, and quite honestly, it doesn't make any social sense. Yeah, but Rick, they broke the law. Yeah, That's true. And why did they? Because we didn't enforce it. We didn't enforce it. So, let's fix it. And you're not going to fix it by yammering against the Democrats or the Republicans. You're not going to fix it by reaching out to Washington, D.C. at all. They have no vested interest to fix it. 2:54 the time, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, he's with me next, and we're going to find out what's going on now about the Austin bombing, also about the sanctuary cities, and why is the headline reading Ken Paxton is at war with education. That doesn't make sense.
This is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820, WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, 4 minutes after the hour, 3:04 the time. Glad you're along. Monday through Friday, your afternoon drive, broadcasting out of Dallas-Fort Worth. And, of course, you can hear us all across the country. It's toll-free wherever you are. 1-800-288-WBAP. Glad to have back, once again, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, the busiest guy in Texas, I think. I offered one time to shadow him for a day just to see what this guy does. And then I looked. And I said, no, I'm not up to that. I don't have that much energy. Attorney General Ken Paxton, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Obviously, it was great to finally get this guy and stop the horrific bombings.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit. They really threw a huge volume of officers, law enforcement in general, federal and regional, at this thing. It was if you think about how many people are in Texas or even in Austin, to be able to single this guy out was really, that was a coup.
Yeah, it was. Think about it. It took them 18 years to track down the Unabomber, and I think it was 7 years to put the Atlanta Olympics bomber behind bars, and this was done in 19 days. So yeah, it was a pretty remarkable effort by Austin PD and also some of our state and federal officers.
Let me just get the wrap up from you. Now, there was a list found, I guess, of potential targets. All those, residences and other addresses, they've been cleared, right?
That's correct. They've all been checked out. They haven't found any problems. Of course, they still, Austin PD and others are still saying, be on the alert because there could be something left over. But the bomber also had a list of the different bombs that he built, and those have all been accounted for. Wow,
amazing! 19 days. That's. I have family in law enforcement, and these things just can draw out forever. So
years.
Yeah, great work on their part. This is, just one of those questions you have to ask, and I don't know that there's any answer to it. When it comes to something like this, where seemingly he had problems, I guess, pretty challenged, it's almost impossible to protect yourself from something like this, isn't it, when it's so random?
Yeah, I mean, it really is, because it wasn't like he was targeting a particular group. It didn't look like it. It wasn't like a hate crime. He just was a troubled kid that decided, for some reason we'll never know because he's not here anymore, to start building bombs and kill people.
Somebody asked me about school shootings. I'm going to ask you the same thing. They said, Rick, what's the answer? And I said, well, from my perspective, the immediate answer is to put law enforcement in schools, limit the ingress and egress as far as who can get in and who can get out, try to monitor that. But the long-term effect is something that's not going to be done overnight. We've got to reinstill in society a value for human life. We've lost that.
No, that's absolutely true, because you can't account for every person like this. You just can't. How could you know? I mean, his friends didn't even recognize it. His roommates, his family, no one knew he was doing this. It's so, you're right. It has to be something that's instilled internally.
Yeah, and it's, we've got a long, long road as far as trying to reinstill value for human life, consequence for action, responsibility, and all of that. But, man, great job to all law enforcement, shutting this thing down. And I think, like you said, 19 days. I've got to ask you about something else. Sanctuary cities. It's coming to a head. We're getting to point where, my grandfather always used to say, as long as you keep talking, you can generally come to a compromise. But once you quit talking, you pass the line of demarcation, so to speak. With California, it doesn't surprise me at all. What about Texas?
So we're actually in good shape. Our legislature passed the sanctuary city law that is very reasonable, that basically requires that law enforcement officials and elected officials cooperate with federal authorities in turning over criminals who are illegal. Very reasonable. We actually were sued over that by cities like Dallas,
right,
San Antonio, and Houston. We lost in district court, but the Fifth Circuit just flipped that and said that our law was perfectly reasonable and it was lawful. So it's back in place.
It doesn't surprise me that the Dallas mayor and the Brain Trust City Council would come up with the opposite thing that makes common sense. But I've been thinking about this, and I haven't talked about this to you off the air, but it seems to me we're going to be talking about the illegal immigration issue 50 years from now if we don't reevaluate what we've done, or in some cases what we haven't done. I would think that D.C., if there was any political will whatsoever, would have created and maintained control of a non-existent southern border after the second tower fell in New York on 9/11, but they didn't because there was no political will. Not sure there is now. But, at some point, don't you have to do that and then say, okay, now we have a border, we control it, we secure the security and sovereignty of a nation is in play. The people that are here that are not criminals or gangbangers or human traffickers, we're not going to give you citizenship, but we're not going to come deport you either. You can work towards citizenship on your own time. Doesn't something like, that's a realistic view.
Yeah, I actually had a meeting with the president on Tuesday at the White House to discuss this very issue. What can we do? Where are we going? The good thing is we actually have finally a president that wants to do something about this, which I haven't seen one in my lifetime that really cared that much about it. So, what I'm saying? It really is. He is pushing that agenda. And we met with a couple of sheriffs from other states. We met with a couple of congressmen, senators. We met with his Homeland Security Secretary and his Immigration and Enforcement person. He's pretty serious about dealing with this, and I'm encouraged by the fact that he is relentless in pushing for border security and the ending of sanctuary city status. As a matter of fact, they just filed a lawsuit against California, which Texas and other states we're going to file an amicus brief in support of the Department of Justice over California, because that in the end affects us.
Well, it does, and see, this is why it's important to. Have your voice heard. Of course, we hit all of Dallas-Fort Worth, but we hit all across the country. Nobody on television, the television news channels, they've been too busy with porn stars, but nobody's talking about the fact, you just met with the president, what was it, a couple days ago?
Yeah, it was Tuesday. We had a really good meeting. It was about an hour and a half long. The media was there. There were about 20, 25 cameras, so they could have covered it if they wanted to, but apparently not interesting to them.
Yeah, well, yeah. Unless one of the people involved is named Stormy, most of the news channels won't cover it. Talking with the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. We'll come back. We need to step away very quickly. Check your afternoon drive. Try to get you around the hot spots. I'm going to ask the Attorney General when we come back, why is the headline screaming, the Texas AG at war with public education and voting? I know the guy pretty well, and he's a pretty pro-education guy. I wonder what that headline's all about. We'll find out next. All right, 3:15 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. This is the Court of Public Opinion, your voice, your opinion, your attitude on the issues of the day. Talking with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, probably one of the busiest men in Texas. And he just got through telling you that you didn't see it on the news channels. I didn't see it. I immerse myself in the news, 5-6 days a week. I try to get out of it Saturday and Sunday just so I don't drive everybody nuts. But I didn't know that. I didn't. My idea was, control, secure the southern border, and then let's deal with this realistically. We've got an illegal immigration problem in no small part because of our inaction on getting anything done. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, was it a good meeting with President Trump? Is he? Where are we at on this thing?
So you know what? I was really encouraged. First of all, the fact that he called the meeting together with 15 leaders from around the country, and we had law enforcement people there. We had victims. One mother whose son had been killed by an illegal. We had senators there, U.S. senators, congressmen. We had another AG, Attorney General from Arkansas. We had General Sessions there, the
right.
United States Attorney. And we had a great discussion about what we cared about. And it really came down to really simple issues like, let's secure the border first. Let's deal with our sanctuary city issue that's, exploding in the United States. Those were two of the highlights of what we talked about. The president is clearly engaged on both of those issues.
Yeah, see, it seems, to me, I'm not in the big middle of it like you are, but to me, you now have, I think, some political will to create, maintain, and control a southern border. That's going to take a little while. Once that is complete, you deal with a sanctuary city problem, which in itself, if you complete this, it kind of goes away on its own. You start vetting people instead of deporting people. And if you're not a criminal, if you're not a gangbanger, human trafficker, whatever it happens to be, obviously they got to go. Everybody else, okay, we're not going to give you citizenship, but we're not going to come knocking on your door at midnight. Work, go to school, what you need to do, work on your citizenship as you have time. And it seems to me that's the way to go. I know people hate me for saying that, but you can't wiggle your nose and change the current situation, right?
Yeah, I mean, what's being proposed is really not that, I don't think should be that controversial. You're talking about securing your border, which finally Trump has allowed his own people to do, and it's starting to actually work because our border crossings are way down from when Obama was in office. He wouldn't even let customs and enforcement even do their job.
Right.
And then if you think about Sanctuary City, all you're trying to do there is protect citizens from the illegals who've committed crimes. It's shocking to me that so many cities want to protect those people.
Well, the California situation doesn't surprise me. I got, public notification on sex offenders through finally, but, I had to go to Sacramento a half a dozen times because, well, it's not fair. It's double jeopardy. It's this, it's that. No, it isn't. It's all that information's public domain, and, we need to be letting people know if you're a child sex offender, you don't need to live across the street from a daycare center. I mean, the things that you and I would just assume are givens, common sense, politically, it's like pulling teeth trying to get anything done.
No, you're right. And that's the sanctuary city issue is one of those things where we're actually spending taxpayer dollars. We have cities, from Dallas to Houston to San Antonio to El Paso suing the state because they want illegal criminals to be able to stay here. They want to be able to protect them. I don't know how you justify that in any way to your taxpayers.
Exactly. I mean, a lot of people that are here are hardworking, God-fearing. They came here to try and feed their families. Living under a corrupt system in Mexico doesn't excuse breaking the immigration law, but I'm a realist. We've got the situation, and again, in no small part because we didn't do anything to enforce the southern border, so let's at least deal with it and stop. Otherwise, your son and mine are going to be talking this same conversation in 30 years.
No, you're right. And look, Reagan gave amnesty with the hope that they would secure the border back in 1986. That clearly didn't work because no one ever secured the border. The first thing you have to do is make sure you stop the problem, and then you can address the issue of what do you do with people that are already here.
Right. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Once you secure the border, then you deal with that issue. All right. Texas Attorney General Paxton, here's the headline. Texas Attorney General at war with public education and voting. I find that a little hard to believe.
Well, it is funny since my mother was an educator. My wife is an educator, been a teacher for over 20 years and a guidance counselor. So it's interesting that they would say that. What they're talking about is my office enforcing the law. As a school administrator, or school teacher, or principal, whatever, you're not allowed to use taxpayer resources to advocate for any candidate for political office. And my office was tasked with the job of enforcing Texas law, which says you can't do that. So there were several school officials around the state that we sent cease and desist orders to stop them from using taxpayer resources to promote a candidate, whether it was Republican or Democrat. Some of them were Republicans. And so now the papers say that's anti-education. But in reality, all we're doing there is following the law. And I think doing what most people would think is reasonable, which is keep the elections out of being funded by taxpayer resources at the schools.
Yeah, I knew what the story was behind the headline, but unfortunately, a lot of people will stop at the headline. I wanted to make sure they knew the whole story.
Well, yeah, it's interesting how they grabbed that headline, and it's as far from the truth as you could possibly be. But that doesn't always get in the way of an interesting headline. No,
you're right. I did a Facebook Live event with Governor Abbott, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. Had a pretty good time. And, he lines up pretty much where you are on these sanctuary cities and some of the other issues that we're dealing with. So that was good to hear. What's on your agenda? I mean, we probably don't have time in a 3-hour show to go through your daily calendar, but what do you got going on?
Well, so one of the biggest things coming up in April is we have a U.S. Supreme Court case on redistricting that comes out of our redistricting efforts in 2011 and 2013. If you can believe, here we are in 2018, still fighting over maps that are going to be redrawn in a couple of years. But it's going to the U.S. Supreme Court. Our maps were struck down by a 3-judge panel. And the interesting thing was that the 3-judge panel that struck it down, they were the ones that drew the maps. And then we adopted them. And then when we got sued over them, they said they were unlawful and unconstitutional. So we're now defending the maps they drew. And the good thing is the Supreme Court reversed them on allowing our maps to sleep until our case could be heard.
Well, that's good news. That's good news. If people want to touch base, you have a website. It's TexasAttorneyGeneral.gov, correct?
That's correct. That's it. If you send us an email, we'll get back to you.
All right. Well, listen, it's always a pleasure. If you ever slow down for an hour in downtown Dallas, give me a yell. We'll have lunch. Of course, I can imagine that lunch, you're going to be on your cell phone the whole time.
Well, we need to take you up on your offer to come to Austin sometime. You should do it.
I will. I absolutely will. I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you're doing for the state. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. All right. Let's step aside very, very quickly. And where are we going here? We're going to Dennis Martin. That's where we're going. Dennis Martin in the WBAP newsroom. We'll check your afternoon drive as well. What do you think? What do you think about his? Did you hear about his meeting with Trump on Tuesday? I didn't until just now. And what were they talking about? The very thing that we were talking about. If we had news channels that actually gave you the news, it's not news anymore. I know, I got a break. It's not news anymore. It's presentation. I think a lot of these news directors in these television news channels, they just get together. They think they're promoting or presenting a one-act play. It's not news. It's a presentation. We all have bias. I get that. We all do. I do, you do, we all do. But when it comes to news, I had the opportunity to sit down in studio with Walter Cronkite. And he stayed for, how long was it? He was supposed to be there 15 minutes. He stayed for over an hour. And I can't think of anything politically I agreed with him on. But, man, you can't think of anything that happened in the last half century that he didn't either report on or was a part of. We don't have that anymore. We don't have him anymore. But we don't have news. I don't know where you get your news. David, where do you? Well, it's an all-day thing, isn't it?
Yes, it's from when I go to bed till I wake up.
There you go. We do it so you don't have to. All right, Dennis Martin, straight ahead. Then we'll come back, take your calls. Coming up, I'm a high school student. We can make school safer without curbing gun rights. He's coming up here in just under 30 minutes. You think you're going to see this guy on CNN? No, man, they don't even want to be in the same zip code with this guy because he doesn't further their agenda or their narrative. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, 3:32 the time. Glad you're along the Court of Public Opinion, Rick Roberts Show. My thanks to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. And I need to touch base with him on a couple other things, David. Don't let me forget that, if you would. All right, I want to get to your calls, 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Phyllis is in Bedford. Phyllis, how you doing?
Great. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you.
Very good interview with Paxton.
Thank you.
And I really enjoy listening to your show. I appreciate you taking my call. I would like to say that you are not promoting amnesty. You're promoting a qualification. And I agree completely with all of the things you said, that people, they can't be gangbangers or rapists or murderers and all that business, towards a path of a qualified non-citizen. But I think you missed one huge thing, and that is when I'm in a store or any place, I can tell whether somebody is a U.S. citizen or not when they can't speak English, they can't read English, and they don't understand English. And I think that if we get a driver's license because we're a citizen, and if you issue driver's license, which you can show to vote, I think that people that don't speak English shouldn't be able to get a driver's license because they can't read the signs. If somebody tries to talk to them, they don't understand. In Oklahoma, they don't give them driver's licenses. So they don't have as much, I suspect, they don't have as much voter fraud there. But I was in line to vote the last time, and the two people behind me couldn't speak English because I turned around and asked them the question, and they said they don't speak English. I mean, the woman absolutely didn't, but the guy could speak a tiny bit. Now, I think they should be issued a non-citizen driver's license so that they can't vote, and that would help a lot with that issue. But if they qualified under your qualifications, then they could be given a non-citizen driver's license or ID, that they could qualify for certain non-citizen things.
Well, yeah, I mean, once you step on American soil, there are certain constitutional protections you receive just for being here.
Right.
But the reason Governor Gray Davis got recalled in the state of California was this very reason. He was trying to give illegals driver's licenses. And as a matter of fact, I had the director of Homeland Security on about that. I worked with Richard Reardon and, became governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger. We did an up and down the coast thing, trying to recall Governor Gray Davis, and it worked. And it was for this very reason, giving illegals driver's licenses. Now, look, if you're here and you've broken the immigration law, there should be some, we're not going to shun you, but I'm a realist. At the end of the day, when you look at what's going on here, I mean, we're talking about the same things we were talking 20 years ago on illegal immigration. Nothing's changed except more illegals are here. So, you can't blame the entire thing on the illegals if they're simply trying to feed their family. Now, if they're gangbangers, human traffickers, drug dealers, they got to go, period. But if you have vetted them, there's no criminal background, not in small part the inaction by the people in Washington that talk a good game but follow through very rarely, we still don't control and secure the southern border. Do that first. That's priority one. Whether it's a fence or drones or border patrol agent, or whatever it is, whatever it takes. Other countries have done it. It's not like we're trying to figure out how to split an atom. I mean, we know how to do these things. Control and secure the southern border. That's number one. Once that's finished, then you go about the business of dealing with sanctuary cities, which, if you fully complete this plan, they take care of themselves. And then you vet the people that are here. If they don't have a criminal record, they get to stay. Because you're not going to deport, 15, 20 million people. That's not going to happen. So they get to stay. They can't vote. They don't get automatic citizenship, but they get to stay. without the threat of somebody coming to deport them. That way they can work on their citizenship, be given some type of, as you say, a non-citizen driver's license or something, so whatever they need to get around, and they can work on their citizenship or their path to citizenship from there. And then we can stop talking about illegal immigrants. We can stop talking about the tsunami wave of Central Americans flooding across the non-existent southern border. That just makes perfect sense to me. You know, maybe the terms don't line up to your way of thinking, but pragmatically, I don't see any other way to do it. All right. Let's go. Thank you for the call, Phyllis. Very good call. Let's go to Gerald and Hubbard. Gerald, thank you for waiting. How you doing?
Hey, sir. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Good, good. Hey, I just wanted to come up with a point. My ex-wife was from Reynosa, Mexico, and I had to do a lot of fees and a lot of paperwork to have her come across and be legalized the right way. It took about 6 years, if I remember right. Anyway,
the legal immigration in this country is a joke. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, but with the voter fraud, I remember my 71 Chevelle got slapped with a Vicente Fox bumper sticker, and I was really upset about that. But I remember she went to vote and took me along, and I was sitting there, and she got stamped with this purple-looking ink stuff that didn't come off for like days. And then she had to show her voter card. Well, why can't we do something like that?
Yeah, you're talking about voting in Mexico.
Yeah. Well, she was a legal resident of Mexico before she became a legal citizen of the United States. So, yeah, I mean, well, why can't we do that?
We can. There's no political will, and hasn't been, to get it done. When Reagan gave amnesty, it was a good idea, but it was just backwards. You got to secure the border first. You know, that was a part of his plan, but there was no political will to do that. There's no political will to do it now.
Yep, I completely agree. You got to secure everything first, and then go about. But with the voting, I mean, I think that's something that we could take care of if there was that will that you're talking about. That can be done readily.
Yeah, we slowly have to start replacing these monoliths that have been in D.C. since they invented dirt.
There's a few that have been in there as long as I've been alive.
Exactly. So we've got to replace them. We need to get D.C. working for the American people again instead of the American people working on behalf of D.C. You know, I've lived and worked there. You know, I trained Fox people to do radio. Man, talk about a living nightmare. I live just across the bridge in Alexandria, and it's an anomaly. It operates differently. These people don't deal with the same issues you deal with. When a politician comes on, I know what the middle class is. You don't know squat. You know, you live in a bubble in a town that is set up for you. Nobody tells you no. It's almost as bad as Hollywood in its own way. So, you know, let's take control of this. Stop talking about illegal immigration and start doing something. But the first thing we're going to have is a wall or a fence or a drone or a robot or chinchillas. I don't know. Put whatever you got down at the border, secure it. Then we can resolve this issue. You can resolve anything. It's just like trying to burglar proof your home, right? You know, you put up all the cameras and you got the sirens, you got the lights, the movement meters, you got all that stuff, but you got no back door. You haven't put a back door on yet. Well, it doesn't matter what you do until you put a door on the house. I mean, and that's exactly what we've got to do. You know, and we're not going to deport 15, 20, or 25 million people. You know, that's never, ever going to happen. Ever. So let's find out who the undesirables are, the gangbangers, the dope dealers, human smugglers, perpetual DUI offenders. Get rid of them. You can deport those. And the rest of them, we leave alone. They can work and enjoy America. They can't be citizens until they go through the process, but nobody's going to come, spirit them away in the middle of the night. Well, Rick, that's just giving amnesty. Listen, I'm a realist. I wish it were another way. It's not. And the inability for the D.C. to do anything, whether they promised in a campaign to do it or not, is in no small part the whole reason these people are here. All right, 3:43 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. Coming up, well, I've given you the headline. He says, I'm a high school senior. We can make school safer without curbing gun rights. We'll be talking to him in about 15 minutes. We'll take your calls when we come back. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, 3:49 the time. This is Junior in Hearst. Junior, thank you for waiting. How you doing?
Oh, love you, Rick. It's JR. Everybody knows JR, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me.
Hey, I have to agree with you, buddy. I have to disagree with you.
Well, that's if we were all exactly the same, a lot wouldn't be necessary, so I get that.
Well, I brought my girlfriend, my fiancée, over here on a K-1 visa from Ukraine and married her within 10 days. She got 90 days to do it. I couldn't wait. I took her out to Hawaii and married her.
Right.
Okay. She got a green card 6 months later. So she got her original green card in 2015. It was good for 2 years. Okay. So you got to renew it, right?
Well, that's the law.
That's right. And you can't send that application in prior to 90 days prior to its being due. Okay. Did all that. They got it within like day 89 or 88. It should be an automatic thing. We bought this property here. She is a joint owner. We have a joint checking account. She is my wife. They sent us a letter extending it for an authorization to work and travel to and from the country. Her original green card is expired. What are you going to do about that?
What am I going to do about it?
You're not going to do anything, but what you're proposing is slapping me and everybody else that's done it legally in the face. And
you're being slapped in the face right now. I've been saying this forever. The people that are most unhappy, most have the visceral reaction to this, are the people that stood in line, did what they were supposed to do. The government has given the back of their hand to the people that did it the right way for decades. But it's got to end someplace, JR.
Well, it's like if you're going to walk across the United States, it begins one step at a time. Deportation can begin one case at a time. And don't tell me we can't do it.
We can't.
Yeah, we can.
Well,
they rounded up how many Nisei?
What?
They rounded up how many Nisei in World War II and put them in camps until they could process them.
All right. Look, there's no political will to establish a southern border, let alone round everybody up. I'm just trying to be a realist. I'm not a fan of amnesty by any stretch. And people like you are probably more upset about illegal immigration than the people that were born here. But they're slapping you around as it is.
I know.
So what I'm saying is, instead of wringing our hands and woe is me, we're like those kids in that Florida shooting looking toward D.C. Help us, government, help us, help us. Well, first of all, they are obligated to secure this country. They are obligated to create and establish borders. That goes without saying. So force them to do what they're obligated to do as the federal government, or as the founding fathers called them, the general government. And then once that's done, and that's not going to happen overnight, then we start dealing with the illegal immigrants that are here. If they're just like you and me trying to work and raise their kids and go to work, then they get to stay. The drug, that'll free up more law enforcement, both regional and federal, to round up the drug dealers, the gangbangers, and all the rest. Get rid of them. That's doable. And then the millions upon millions that are just here to put food on the table that they couldn't do under a corrupt government in Mexico, which again is no excuse, they get to stay. You don't offer up citizenship, but you give them a chance to get citizenship. Part of the reason they're here is because of the failure of the federal government to do their job. So let's be realistic. Rick, you're an amnesty whore. No, I'm not. I'm just saying I'm realistic. I don't want to be talking about this 30 years from now. So let's fix it, for crying out loud. We can do that. And I understand, JR, your feelings. Totally get it. But realistically, as a nation, we've got to do something to deal with this. First, foremost, establish, maintain a border, and then you find out who these people are, vet them, get rid of the criminals. The rest of the people can stay. All right? And then from that point, you start doing what every other country does, maintaining a border. People that come here have to go through a process, and the process we have sucks, by the way. It needs to be reformed. All right, JR, I appreciate the call. All right, you haven't seen this kid on CNN or MSNBC or Headline News or Morning Joe. They don't want to talk to him. He's not furthering their agenda. He's not pushing their narrative. He's a high school senior that said, and I quote, "We can make schools safer without curbing gun rights." Will Farthing's my guest. Coming up on News Talk 820 WBAP.
This is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820 WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, 4 minutes after the hour. This is the Court of Public Opinion, your voice, your opinion, your attitude on the issues of the day. Broadcasting out of Dallas-Fort Worth Monday through Friday from 2 to 5, your afternoon drive. Heard across the country from coast to coast. It's a toll-free number, 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Young man, 18 years old. He's a senior at a high school in Charlotte, North Carolina. I seriously doubt if he'll be the point man on CNN or MSNBC or Headline News or Morning Joe, because he doesn't carry the narrative. He doesn't push the agenda. The headline reads, "I'm a high school senior. We can make schools safer without curbing gun rights." You know, I've read this young man's article, and he's mature beyond his years. He makes a lot of sense, and that's why you won't see him on the news. You know, he makes the argument, if gun control that we have doesn't prevent the kind of tragedy that occurred in Florida, why is it that so many people are fighting for? What is it? Change is needed, but that does not mean we have to strip law-abiding citizens of their rights. This is coming from an 18-year-old senior. Will Farthing, I want to make sure I pronounce it correctly. Will Farthing is with me. Will, if I may call you Will, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Rick. Thanks for having me on the show.
You bet. What was the genesis for this piece that you wrote? I mean, where did this come from?
Well, I obviously I go to high school, and like a lot of high schoolers right now, I mean, people around me are really upset about the gun laws in the country, but my problem is I watch the news every night like everybody else, and you see that, like I say in the article, the only position that's given any credence is the pro-gun control position, the position that states that to be safe we need to take guns away from 18-year-olds, from 25-year-olds, from just certain types of guns. Maybe it's AR-15. Just people, I see that every night when I go home and when I'm at school, and they don't ever talk about the other half of us. I mean, there's millions of kids in this country and teenagers just like me who don't believe those things. So I got on my computer. I started writing things down. I have some people I work with at the Leadership Institute in D.C., and they got me hooked up with the Daily Signal, and they really wanted to give my opinion, the opinion of millions of other teenagers in America. You know, they wanted to give us a voice, and that's how the article got written and published.
You write, if I may quote you in third person, almost all of the students featured on cable news networks do nothing but criticize the National Rifle Association and claim that anyone who does not support their cause doesn't care about the victims of school shootings. The media coverage is not only biased, but morally deficient, in that the large networks lie and insist they are politically neutral while propagandizing for one particular side. That's exactly right. It's not just on gun control issues, it's on political issues as well. When you say, Will, we can make our schools safer without curbing gun rights. Specifically, what do you mean by that?
And in the article, I talk about this a little bit. I say, and as we saw, actually, in Maryland, I think it was yesterday or the day before, there was another school shooting, and
right.
an armed resource officer, a police officer, stopped the shooting. He fired at the shooter, and as far as I know right now, only one person has died, and that's the shooter. And that's the solution I pose in my article, is that the government spends millions and millions of dollars on things that, aren't worth spending money on. And they waste our money. They're inefficient. And so I advocate for cutting money from other parts of the government and from state governments and the federal government, and giving money to schools to put at least, I would support 2 or 3, but at least one armed police officer on school campuses from the beginning of the school day to the end of the school day.
Oh, what about, and by the way, in that school shooting you were talking about, the gun smoke hadn't even blown away before politicians were jumping in front of cameras and saying this is why we need to get rid of AR-15s and different background check. Well, first of all, the kid used a pistol, and it was his dad's legally purchased. I got a question for Dad. What do you do with your firearm when you're not using it? Obviously, you don't lock it up. You talk about raising the minimum age when it's legal to purchase a rifle. Expand on that a bit.
In the article, I don't advocate for raising the legal age to buy a rifle. I talk about, Florida recently passed their law that raised the age of buying any firearm from 18 to 21.
Right.
And in the article, I complain about how we're in the eyes of the law, 18-year-olds are adults in America. We can be tried as adults. I say we can be drafted. We can serve our country and die overseas, but we can't purchase a firearm. And in Florida, you can't. So I just see that as unconstitutional, for one, and I'm glad the NRA is suing the state of Florida to, fight for those 18 to 20-year-olds' rights. But I don't support any ban on almost, any weapon at the time. I think that the more freedom people have, the safer we all will be. So as far as the gun bans go, I'm not in support of that whatsoever.
Well, you write that for those of us that support the Constitution, Florida's new law is just another example of liberal idealism, limiting the rights of citizens while also failing to accomplish its goal. I couldn't agree more with you. At the end of the day, do you think that maybe was a knee-jerk reaction to the Florida school shooting?
Yes, and I do. And I hesitate to speak too negatively. Those people have gone through a lot, and I understand that. I can't imagine what that's like. Thank God I have never had to go through a school shooting, or my community has had to go through that. However, if every time something bad happens, we resort to taking away the rights of Americans, that's a dangerous precedent to set, And so now one constitutional right has been taken from the teenagers and 20-year-olds of Florida. And, if, let's say, and after this Maryland thing, handguns, are those next because we're afraid of a school shooting with handguns? It's just a slippery slope in my eyes. And, in the end, yes, I think that the Florida legislature did what they did because people are emotionally upset, and they want some comfort from the government right now. And so that's why Florida did what it did.
Talking with William Farthing. I'm a high school senior. We can make schools safer without curbing gun rights. As I said, you probably won't see him walking point on CNN or MSNBC because he doesn't drive that narrative. He doesn't drive that agenda. When we come back, Will, I've got to step aside very quickly. When we come back, I have a question. And I know you're a part of the, shall I say, school group, teenage group. We saw thousands upon thousands of teenagers coming out in support of gun control, the walkout. Do you believe, based on what you saw, they were being manipulated, orchestrated as political pawns in these demonstrations and what you heard was going on? Will Farthing is my guest. We'll come back, take your calls, and he'll answer that next on News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, 4:17 the time. He's a high school senior, wrote a piece, "We Can Make Schools Safer Without Curbing Gun Rights." He is 18-year-old Will Farthing. Will, I asked right before the break, you have witnessed the same thing we have. CNN, it was wall-to-wall kids saying they need government help, they need the government to do something, blaming the NRA. I mean, it was on and on and on. Do you believe that these kids, in some form or fashion, were being manipulated to further a political agenda?
Yeah, I really do, and not all of them. I think because the media made it seem like the walkouts were for, to show solidarity for the people who have been killed and for victims. And so a lot of kids, I think, walked out for that reason, not particularly supporting gun control, but just to show that they care about the people who died. And then there are other kids who used that large show of support to, spread their message of their political message. And I think the media focuses on those kids more than other kids who were doing a good thing. That's what I think.
Well, have you ever been contacted by CNN or MSNBC?
No, I have not. I've never been contacted. They have their own agenda, and I don't think they want to hear from people like me or people like Kyle Kashuv, who's a Parkland survivor, who's pretty conservative. They want to push their agenda, and anyone who gets in the way of that, they're going to ignore.
Yeah, well, you make that statement in your piece that people that don't fall into the crowd, so to speak, under the tutelage of Democrats, and I'm not making this a Republican-Democrat thing, but you've got to recognize it for what it is. You're saying that your viewpoint is being largely, if not totally, ignored.
Of course it is, but that's nothing new. If you're a conservative young person, I mean, has CNN or MSNBC ever said anything about or anything positive about the pro-life movement or about the gun rights movement or about lowering taxes? Everything that is conservative is bad to them, and they will avoid it like the plague. And so the fact that they didn't want to put kids who support gun rights on after the Parkland shooting and after other school shootings doesn't surprise me in the slightest, and it really shouldn't surprise anyone in America at this point.
Well, you also write about something that I talked at length about, most people didn't even know about. You write, in fact, if the Obama administration had not pressured school districts to lower their discipline rates to combat the school-to-prison pipeline, maybe the Parkland shooter, 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz, wouldn't have slipped through the cracks, and the justice system would have prevented that tragedy that occurred at the high school. Tell people about that.
All right, so during the Obama administration, there are high discipline rates on students of different backgrounds, different races, different everything. And so the Obama administration wanted to cut down on the negativity towards students from disadvantaged backgrounds who were going into school and getting in trouble and maybe getting arrested if they did something wrong. And there was this so-called school-to-prison pipeline where these students they had a bad upbringing and they never got a chance. They went from school straight into a hard life of crime or, being disadvantaged. So the Obama administration through their Department of Education encouraged schools to cut down their discipline rates. And some schools, they talked about, maybe holding back funding. And I know there were some threats there. I don't know how deep it ran, but lots of counties around the country, including Broward County, and that was on Fox News the other night. You can see how the Broward County Sheriff's Department and the specific high school, they didn't report certain bad actions on the part of Nicholas Cruz, who ended up committing the shooting. And if they would have, that could have, and he would have gotten in trouble and maybe incarcerated or institutionalized, maybe that could have prevented the shooting that happened in Parkland.
Yeah, the the school to prison pipeline is something everybody needs to, you need to vet that. You need to take a look at that. And hopefully we've reversed that action, because that makes no sense at all. You also write, regardless of past failures, Everyone knows that a determined shooter will find a way to get a gun. All the restrictions in the world won't stop a deranged teenager from taking a parent's rifle and trying to murder his classmates. Why do you think so many teenagers don't understand that common sense approach to this?
Honestly, I don't know. The funny thing is, I wrote that statement 2-3 days before the Maryland shooting, where a teenager stole his parents' pistol and shot up the high school. So it reigns true. But I think most students who support gun control see the government and what they're doing, trying to control people, as the only way to really keep us safe. They don't get that. They think if the government makes a law, like they say something's illegal, then that's the last word on it. People aren't going to do it. It's illegal now. And they completely overlook the fact that people break laws every day, and that is the nature of humanity. People do things wrong all the time. So I think that they are just so trusting that if the government does something and tries to prevent something, that it's really going to make a difference.
Yeah, you also wrote, like I say, you're mature beyond your years, and you've done some research before this piece, I can tell. As a nation, we should not let the victims of the shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School die in vain. We need to stop with the rhetoric that more gun control laws will make any notable difference when it comes to preventing school shootings. And then you lay out some solutions. You don't just talk about the problems as far as armed police officers and things like that. I got to ask you, what do you plan to do? Because as I say, a very good piece. You're sort of swimming against the tide, certainly politically and with other teenagers. What are your plans? What do you want to do when you get out of high school?
I'm going to North Carolina State University. I'm going to study political science and hopefully go into politics. I'd love to be, I'd love to run for state representative, and then hopefully, federal politics. That's my whole interest in my life. That's what I'm passionate about.
Well, you're on a good track, and you've got an uphill battle, but I'm sure you know that. I want you to stay in touch with me, will you?
Oh, of course.
Will Farthing, great piece. It's entitled, "I'm a High School Senior. We Can Make Schools Safer Without Curbing Gun Rights." It's a society commentary. And again, David, this is what?
This is on the what the website I got it from?
Yes.
Daily Caller.
Okay.
Daily Signal, excuse me. Daily Signal.
Daily Signal.
Apologize.
So look that up. Daily Signal, Will Farthing. Just a great piece. And I'm wondering if you would sit down with 10 teenagers from various high schools, have them read this piece, what would their response be? All right. My thanks again to Will Farthing. 4:25 the time. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, 4:32 the time. My thanks to Will Farthing for being with us. I wish I could say I was that hooked up mentally when I was 18. No. Kid's mature beyond his years. Let's go to your calls. Bob in Carrollton. Bob, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Bob?
Good, Rick. How are you doing today?
Well, thank you.
Hey, I've called and talked to you a couple of different times. I love your non-hysteric approach to the problems that exist in this country recently. I was listening to this kid, and I agree with you. Hearing somebody 18 years old that understands what he's thinking and where it came from is pretty rare.
He is the piece is well worth the read. He's got it together.
Yeah, I'm going to read it when I get home. What I called for it was one of the things that I keep hearing the question over and over again is why can't these people see the solutions the way people like Will does? And it's besides critical thinking, which they don't teach anymore, most people don't understand root cause analysis, which is a business technique of finding what the actual problem is, not what the symptom to the problem is. And so they look at us. They look at this is a symptom. Somebody's shooting somebody, or I tell people this example: you get sick a lot. It's not because you're weak and you have a bad immune system. It's because you're kissing your grandbabies. And the root cause is not that you're weakly. It's that, and people can't see beyond the symptom of the problem in this society anymore.
Well, I think also that unfortunately these tragedies, especially the school shootings, are now the fodder, the basis for argument for anti-gun agendas. I mean, we know what the problem is. We've lost value for human life. There's no consequence for action. Shame is not existent. No one's held accountable for anything they do or say. So at the end of the day, when things like this happen, this last shooting was a good example. I read 3 or 4 quotes from politicians that showed up. Well, first of all, why, and except for the mayor or maybe the governor of the state, why are they even there? And the first thing that came out of their mouths were, this is why we need broader background checks. We need to ban the AR-15. Well, the guy was talking. He was giving a sales speech, while they were still investigating, and it wasn't an AR. It was a pistol that was used. It's obvious what it is now. It's just so much fodder for the political gristmill. It's horrible.
Well, sure, and what I'm saying though is that the people that believe that is because they're not thinking for themselves. They're taking the information. They're not actually seeing the problem and coming up with a solution in their own mind or their own, using a process of their own to come up with a solution. They're accepting someone else's. They're seeing the problem and saying, okay, that's a problem, and a solution is fix that problem, but that's not the problem.
Yeah.
That's the symptom of the problem. And like you said, the problem is that kids aren't taught. They're not taught critical thinking. They're not taught. To take responsibility. Those are the problems. Is the education system not necessarily education, but the extent of education to children not being sufficient enough to teach them how to think for themselves and the consequences of the actions that they take.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. If that kid right there was the highlight of CNN or MSNBC or any of these other heavily biased news stations, you might find more kids that feel that way. But they're being excluded, ignored, pushed to the side so that the agenda can move forward.
Right.
That's it.
Right. And the funny thing is that my daughter just graduated college not too long ago. When she left, I told her, just because a lot of people have the same opinion doesn't mean it's correct.
Yep.
When somebody says something different than what you believe, do research on it, because just because you're paying a group of professors and they all believe the same thing or say the same thing, they may not even believe it. Just because they say the same thing and you're paying them doesn't mean what they're saying is correct. So use your own brain. And she came back going, golly, some of the things they say, that they even have a clue what they're talking about. No, they don't.
I've told this story, and my daughter was dealing with the same thing. Her first, when she was a freshman in college, and she was told to write a positive paper on Ebonics and how it was a legitimate language, and she didn't believe that. Street slang is street slang. It's not a legitimate language. So, I hooked up an interview with her and I can't think of his name now. He was the president of the California Board of Regents, and he's African-American, very, very, very well-educated man. And, she got a passing grade, but, unwillingly. She's graduated now, but you're absolutely right. Just because everybody says the same thing doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing. Very good call. I appreciate it, Bob. Let's go to Elena. Is it Elena? Okay. Elena in Granbury. Am I saying your name correctly?
Oh, it's Elaine. That's okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I just wanted to add to what the caller before this last one had to say. He was exactly correct with everything he said, but I want to add to that because I watched a long documentary on it, and that is exactly what Obama did. He wanted to change the statistics for the better for the minorities and all, and he made it so lax that the students, even if they got in trouble, they'd be given a note to take to their parents, but it was not mandatory for them to bring it back. And therefore, they didn't ever give it to their parents. Well, the ruckus got so bad in the schools that's why you saw so many parents who could not afford to put their kids in private schools sacrifice to do so because they wanted them out of that rhetoric. Well,
no, you're right. Absolutely.
Then you were left with only the bad kids, or a whole lot of bad kids, because the better kids were gone. And then you had teachers that wanted to bail. Only the toughest of teachers stuck around for that because, I mean, you saw violence in the classrooms.
Well, the whole idea, the school-to-prison pipeline that Obama came down with, he felt too many kids of color were being arrested and disciplined and so forth. So, believe it or not, he came up with a plan to decriminalize, I think you could say. The school-to-prison pipeline is a process through where students are pushed out of schools and into prisons, he said. It's a process of criminalizing youth that is carried out by disciplinary policies and practices. So Obama basically said, you got to cut that. You got to, this is not right. We need to do something about this. Research showed that the implementation of zero-tolerance policies led to significant increases in suspensions and expulsions, right? So, at the end of the day, maybe that policy played a part. Anytime you give someone a pass, we already have a system that doesn't hold people accountable. No consequence for action. No one's learned that in the last generation. If you've been around for a few days, you know that there's generally a consequence to every action. Not so politically. And that, what do you expect? I mean, do you have that where you work or even in your family life? Of course not. All right, 4:42 the time. I'm still saying that kid's got a bright future as long as he can, keep his head on straight just like it is now. All right, we'll take your calls, 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. You're still angry with me over amnesty, aren't you? Yeah. Call it something else. Call it let's get out of our own way day. I don't know. Call it what you want. It doesn't have to be amnesty. And I think in the purest sense, it's not. So, but you're still upset. You want me to go get a bunch of buses and start rounding people up. I'm telling you, government's not going to do that. The federal government is not in small part why we have this problem to begin with. As a matter of fact, a majority of the problem comes from the nation's capital. You know that. 4:42 the time. Your call straight ahead. All right, 4:47 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. This is the Court of Public Opinion. Glad you're along. With you every day, Monday through Friday from 2 to 5, your afternoon drive out of Dallas-Fort Worth. And, of course, heard across the country, toll-free anywhere, 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. This is Tim in Dallas. Tim, how you doing?
Great, Rick. Just a quick thought. I want to say thank you for having the young man on. When you dumb down education, you create people who can't think for themselves, and he certainly needs to be applauded for what he wrote. And thank you for putting him on.
I'm just amazed that nobody has talked to this kid. Our news channels are inundated daily with throngs of upset teenagers all believing incorrectly that the government somehow can keep them safe.
Yes.
The government can barely do what they're charged with doing. They can't keep us safe. We're our own first responders. They can't even do what they're supposed to do, which is create and maintain a border for the security, sanctity, and sovereignty of a nation. They can't even do that.
it really is a shame. But you and I talked about the history of the world and talked about the Roman Empire, which I use as an example a lot in my speaking. And, we saw the same thing happen in the history with the Roman Senate.
Yeah, it's bad. And it's going to get worse unless we do something.
Yeah, and your voice is out there. Thanks a lot.
Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to a young man that sees the issue. Politicians know they can't save you. They know that they can't make a significant difference. So they focus on something tangible that they can reach out and do and say, look what I've done. I got rid of assault weapons, even though they know that that's not going to stop school shootings. In a study, there was a study done of 185 public mass shootings, 185. And mass shooting, for this purpose of this study, was defined as an incident in which 4 or more people were killed at a public location from 1900 through last year, 2017. It was done by a criminologist, Grant Dway, I think is his name. They found that almost 60% of 185 public mass shootings, almost 60% were committed by people who had been diagnosed as mentally ill or showed some signs of having a serious mental disorder before the attack. Typically, what they see with those who carry out these mass shootings is that they do suffer from a mental disorder. I mean, you think about it, they got to be nuts, right? In some cases, they can diagnose it. Or there's some information from friends and family that indicate they suffered from some type of mental illness. We need to take a look. We need to take a look at that. We need to take a look more at mental illness. Forget these, that Obama's from school to prison pipeline thing, that only enables bad behavior. Doesn't stop it. So why in the world would you subscribe to something like this? Oh, that's right, for federal funds. Another reason why I'm against public education. I don't want the feds involved with educating my kid. Paranoid schizophrenia is what's more common among these individuals in this entire study. They feel like large groups of people are out to get them. They're all responsible for making their life miserable. And these individuals who do this are loners. They're not trusting, so they don't have a lot of close friendships or social relationships. I mean, an analysis on a gun safety study released last year showed that in mass killings between January of 2009 and December 2016, the shooter displayed at least one red flag or many in almost half the cases. So instead of politicians singling out a scary-looking firearm, maybe we ought to be doing the hard work. It's heavy lifting. I get it. It's tough. Trying to figure out who these people are, what's going on, why they're doing these things. I mean, the root, manipulating a bunch of kids to start screaming for government to help them is not going to help anybody. I mean, it gives me no pleasure to say that, the school shootings aren't going to stop. They're not going to be over because we're not paying attention to what we should be doing. We're not doing what we need to do to stop this type of behavior. And the school-to-prison pipeline program that Obama came out with needs to be done away with tomorrow. And when it comes to, like this last school shooting, he committed it with a pistol, his dad's Glock that was legally purchased. My question is, Dad, why didn't you lock it up? It was obvious, even after the fact, that the kid had some issues. He was, I think they were very politely putting it, a challenged, troubled kid. Well, that can mean any number of things. But if you got a firearm in the house and you got a disturbed teenager, you want to make sure that one doesn't find the other. That would be the first thing. If you don't have a safe, get one. It's part of being a responsible gun owner. It's, I don't know. All right. Starting in a couple weeks, we're going to let you be a part of the show for the first hour every day. David, tell them what we're doing.
What we're going to do is we're going to do a Facebook Live the first hour of every show, Monday through Friday, at 2 o'clock from 2 to 3. This is when we'll do our Facebook Live. And what you can do is you can log onto your computer, your tablet, or your smartphone.
Right.
And you can watch the Rick Roberts Show through there.
And you can interact. You can ask questions. You can make comments, ask questions, that kind of thing. Basically, we're going to make it so you can be in studio with me. Now, I don't know how many of you I want to watch Rick Roberts. I mean, but we're going to give you a chance. It'll give you a chance to see the studios and how we're set up and what everybody does.
They can see my view every day.
Exactly.
So I'll be on the other side of the camera.
You'll be on the other side of the camera. All right.
All right.
We'll flip it around and let them see you too.
Please.
No, we're going to do that in a couple weeks, and
okay.
It should be a lot of fun. And people that come in, they see how we put things together. I'm looking at Dennis Martin right now in one direction through the glass as he prepares to do the news for WBAP, and then I'm looking at you and the board up. And by the way, we got a new guy. What's your name?
Christian Powers.
Okay, Christian. Good to have you. Good job today, by the way. All right, that's going to do it for me. Stick around. Mark Levin's next. God's blessings on each and every one of you. That's always my priority, whether we agree or not. I'll be back tomorrow at 2, your afternoon drive on News Talk 820 WBAP.
Don't stop till everything's gone. Straight ahead, never turn around. Don't back up, don't back down. A full throttle, wide open. You get tired and you don't show it. Dig a little deeper when you think you can't dig no more. That's the only way I know. That's the only way I know. That's the only way I know.